to Madame Raven's. This way to the library. She's been expecting you.
Discovery in the Forest by Root Project 9. The campfire was warm. I liked this setting. Seth and Colton were on either side of me, surrounding the fire, staring at it intently, just like me. We were all alone in the forest. I told them I needed to get away from my family. I loved being in the wilderness, and I thought I was often a solitary person. My best buds were the only people that could comfort me in times like this. Thank you, guys. I know sometimes I'm not easy to be around with my moods and everything, but this truly does mean a lot to me. Coming out here to accompany me in the forest. The forest we were in was vast, but we were on the edge near the trail, and if we got in any danger, we came prepared with tons of camping gear and GPS, plus physical maps. Strangely, though, this small area seemed to be unmarked on the map. However, I figured that we didn't need to worry since we were prepared for everything else. It also helped that it was January and no one seemed to bother with being out here, since they were all seemingly wrapped up in New Year's resolutions. Seth responded, "Of course, Maddock, my little bro." He rubbed his knuckles in my hair semi-affectionately, and I pushed his hand away since I rarely like physical contact, especially out of the blue. I stared at Colton, awaiting a response. He might have been the bag of rocks for brains in our group, but he was my friend, and that was all that mattered to me. "Colton, you there, man?" I waved my hand in front of his face. His eyes were dull and distant, as if he were zoning out. Then he suddenly snapped up and exclaimed, "Gotcha. Sure, I'm here." He laughed, content to see me alarmed by his jump scare. "What the hell, man? Whatever, Colt. Let's see if we can get some stories going. It's getting dark out. Perfect time for some stories, don't you guys think?" I said while discerning their reactions. I wanted to escape my bleak reality by at least telling each other some stories, especially scary ones. Colton's ears perked up when he heard that. "All right, I got one. Prepare your ears for this one. It was a late summer night. 3 guys around our age went out for a late-night snack. They had hopped in their truck, and along the way they spotted some, strange things." Colton looked around at Seth and I to gauge our reaction. I had no reaction, but Seth was vaguely curious. Colton continued. "The guys had seen fires burning in the distance while driving. They couldn't tell from what. As they got closer and closer to the store, the fires seemed to get closer, as if they were moving in on them. This was in the middle of nowhere, so seeing fires was odd, but not the oddest thing in the world for them. But to see them move was definitely out of the ordinary. The fires started moving at a much quicker pace, gaining on the truck. The guys were getting scared at this point, so of course they sped up. The fires, however, spread to the road and stopped in front of the truck, so the guy driving the truck decided to stop. The other guys were confused as to why he would do that. The guy driving says, 'We can't outdrive it. We've been driving for 15 minutes now, and the fires have matched our pace, even when we speed up. I think I'm going to check and see what it is.' The other 2 guys in the truck were shocked. They can't believe that he decided to confront what appeared to be fires that can move and keep up with the truck. As he jumped out, he seemed to be in kind of a trance, and they see him disappear into the dark after about 10 minutes. They start to worry. They decide to go out and look for him. To their surprise, he's burnt to an absolute crisp. They try to run back into the truck, fearing for their safety, but the doors are locked, and they feel the heat behind them. They turn around to see a fire in the shape of a man, and that was the last anyone heard from them. Apparently, some people witnessed this, and that's how the legend began. I paused before offering my opinion. I glanced over at Seth, who seemed to be a lot more visibly shaken than me. Colton, sensing both of our reactions, seemed to be a little bit upset at my indifference. He frowned at my expressionless face. I then said what I thought about his story. Not that great, man, honestly. We're out here in the woods, and you would think anything would scare me out here, but that was truly a weak offering you gave us. The ending was pitiful, and I could see it coming from a mile away. I tended to be very blunt with my opinions, especially when I'm not exactly in the best mood. Colton scoffed. All right, you know what? If you're not scared, how about you tell us a story then? He elbowed Seth while smirking and waiting to see my response. I decided against it. It was getting late, and the sun was beyond the skyline. Let's call it a night. We can maybe hike the trail tomorrow night. I'm kind of tired, and I'd rather not do anything else right now. I'm more of a morning person anyway. If you guys want to stay up, feel free to. Seth and Colton decided they'd stay up for a few more, and I headed into the tent to get some shut-eye. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine tranquility. The forest was quiet, barring the birds and the small insects that would stay up into the night. But those noises functioned like ASMR for me. It helped me finally have peace of mind. It must have been no longer than 20 minutes when I heard Seth come barging into my tent. I expected that sort of thing from Colton, but not from Seth. I shakily sat up. Dude, what the hell was that for? Seth looked wide-eyed. Maddox, we heard sounds coming from deeper in the forest, but it didn't sound like any animal we know. We don't think we should set up camp here if we don't at least check it out and make sure it's not someone or something doing suspicious activity we wouldn't want while we're sleeping, man. I thought about it for a second. He was right. Even though I wanted to sleep, sleeping in was a dumb alternative. Besides, I wasn't scared of whatever was out there anyway. Whatever it was, I'd just shove in my earphones and accompany them while we checked out the weird sounds. We gathered some supplies and headed towards the clearing in the forest. We started heading towards where the sound seemed to be coming from. I was hardly paying attention. I doubted it was anything out of the ordinary. I let them gain a few feet ahead of me. I started daydreaming of the life I envisioned for myself. People didn't really understand me. Not even my friends, really. I wanted to be more than this small town. I wanted to be an engineer and take my talents to new heights. They thought I gamed for no reason, but no. I coded in my spare time. It was something I barely told anyone about. Seth and Colton were starting to speed up and get further and further away. They seemed rather enthralled in whatever they were pursuing. Colton yelped out and jumped into some thick bushes, and Seth reached in to go after him. I shook myself from my trance and started running towards where they disappeared into. Guys, where'd you go? Did you find anything? I ran up to the bushes and pushed them apart to see the weirdest sight I'd ever laid my eyes upon. Seth and Colton were standing with their backs turned to me and swaying back and forth. I tapped them and went, Yo, are you guys feeling all right? Is this a prank or a joke? I looked further past them to see a gathering of what looked like naked people. They were surrounding a fire and running around it in a circle as if practicing some kind of ritual. I glanced at Seth and Maddox's faces. They had white pupils. I waved my hand in front of their faces, but could elicit no response. I gulped, not one to normally feel afraid in circumstances like this, but it was a peculiar circumstance. I decided to head down there. I couldn't shake them from their trance, so I had no choice but to confront these naked folk, even if it was against my wishes at the moment to do so. I walked up to one of the naked people circling the fire and reached out to tap them. They spun around so quickly before I could even touch them, as if they could sense my presence. They had literally no facial features. I gasped from shock at the sight. They had no mouth, eyes, nose, eyebrows, nothing at all. It was a smooth, bare face looking back at me. The one facing me emitted a high-pitched frequency, as if they were in defense mode from me approaching them, and the others turned around as if on alert and emitted the same sound. I covered my ears to shield myself from the pain. I turned around to see Seth and Colton shaken from the trance. I guess the frequency had awoken them. I ran towards them and yelled, "Run! We have to get the hell out of here!" They spotted the strange creatures behind me and wasted no time and sprinted towards the bushes to push towards the path. Once I caught up to them, they breathily let out words of desperation. They questioned me one by one. First Colton, who came by, no surprise to me. He was the most cowardly of us all, but he was still my friend, and this situation was unexplainable anyway. "Dude, what were those things? They look, they had no face!" he yelped while gasping for air while sprinting forward through the thicket and bushes in the forest. Next came Seth. "We should have never come here, man. I told you it was a bad idea, Maddox. I heard stories about this forest, people disappearing out here, but you never want to listen, man. Why come here after hearing that stuff?" Seth was always like that, blaming others for his problems or anything that ever went wrong. I sighed before answering them both. I don't know how to answer any of those questions. I think our priority right now is finding a way out of here. We should have made it out of the forest by now, but it seems as if either we are lost or something about the path has changed, which I would go so far as to say isn't far-fetched considering we just saw people that have no faces. I grabbed both of their shoulders and halted them in their tracks. We can't go any further till we figure out a way to evaluate our surroundings. They looked at me in fear, but both nodded in agreement. I couldn't tell if what was in front of us was even real, but I had to take it as fact. So we went with that as the first established basis, or else I would drive myself crazy. The next was that if we traveled in a straight line, that it was maybe our best odds out of the forest. Then again, it could throw us deeper into the forest and leave us there for the night. I had one ace up my sleeve, though. That ace was a compass. I always came prepared because I hiked alone often. Even if this place was charming, I knew our camp was located on the west side of the forest. That could never change, at least due to the landscape. If it were the forest itself changing or the brush or pathways, our camp would be in the same spot no matter what. All I had to do was use the compass to locate our camp. Even though I couldn't pinpoint our exact location, I could use a narrow circle to guess what vicinity we were in. I located that on the map. Bearings helped with this as well. I tried my best to scan for any landmarks I could recognize, any hills, rivers, etc. If the forest was truly changing anyway, this would allow it to be much easier for me to locate a way out of here. I spotted a huge hill outside of the forest that could never move and decided to use that as my landmark. I found the hill on the map and decided to use my best of knowledge and bearing and lining it up with the compass to figure out where in the map we were. Once I did, I told Seth and Colton and said we had to travel in the direction I was leading them to get out. We started heading that way. It was like the forest sensed we were trying to get out. It started moving in front of us. The bushes moved to block our path. We stumbled and fell. We heard footsteps approaching. We all slowly turned around while sitting on the ground to face what we knew was coming. The naked, no-faced people were behind us. They were bare-skinned, hairless. They looked like they were straight out of a factory and made of Play-Doh. I had no idea what they were made of. They didn't seem human or even organic. They continued to emit a weird frequency. I picked up a rock from nearby and smashed it over the heads of one of the beings. Its head surprisingly dented inwards, like it was made of some kind of synthetic material. I gasped in disgust. I turned to Seth and Colton. They both reeled in horror. They were at a loss for words. "We gotta get the hell out of here, man," Colton screamed, and started running full speed. We ran through the bushes, riverbanks. We saw animals, but they all looked extremely fake. Something was off about this entire place. We kept trying to find our campsite, but since we were scrambling now, it was getting much darker, and the hill we previously saw was nowhere in sight anymore. We ran and ran and ran until we ran into what looked like some sort of building. Finally, I felt like we had a chance to get out of here. Seth started knocking on the side of it since it had no apparent doors or windows. "Hey, we need some help. Please, we're stuck in this forest and we can't find our way out of here." We got no response. Not that it was really surprising. The building seemed closed off for any sort of visitors. However, there was strange sounds that started to emanate from the building, like buzzing and beeps, as if there was an operational machine. Maybe this wasn't a building after all. I turned to my friends. "Guys, maybe this isn't really a building. Maybe it's some kind of facility. I wonder if it's how these weird creatures came to be, how this whole weird forest came to be." Seth looked up at the facility with confusion, then understanding. "Okay, I have a plan then. We can't keep banging on this building like that. Maybe this is really the key to getting out of here. If people are doing weird experiments in the middle of this forsaken forest, then they'll have to come out eventually to test their results." Colton was shaking and trembling. "I agree, man. We gotta do something to get the hell out of here. Maybe that's our best bet." So that's what we decided to do. The creatures were nowhere in sight for now, so we hid in some shrubs and waited. Hours eventually passed, and it was starting to get much darker out. Bugs were making their nightly rounds, and the air was tense and rigid. Colton was falling asleep, but Seth was awake and alert. As for me, I was indifferent. I had no idea what to think. The creatures hadn't made an appearance since we last saw them, and we had no idea what to do. I decided to take matters into my own hands. "Screw this. I'm going up to this stupid building. I have a feeling they'll react to what I'm about to do." Seth reached out in shock, instinctively asking, "What are you going to do?" "We're supposed to wait for them to come out." I rushed up to the building and found rocks the size of my head. These rocks were heavy, but enough to do damage to that building if I could build enough momentum. I started circling around, swinging the rock in my hand, getting ready to launch it at the building when I heard whoosh come from the direction of the building. I saw a slit in the side of the building. It was open. I gestured to Seth, and he nudged Colton awake. They both ran over and were equally as shocked as me. The door stood ajar, mist flowing out of it. It was dark, and a void lay beyond it. I gulped, but edged closer with Seth and Colton not far behind. As we stepped in the door, it slammed shut. Alarms started blaring, and the room shifted to a bright red hue. We all shielded our eyes from the bright lights. I had to admit, for the first time ever, I was truly terrified. Watching on the monitor, I couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for these three young lads. They were part of something far greater than they could ever comprehend. This forest was grounds for tests, and ways to figure out a way to save the world from a looming threat that they could never even begin to understand. Those human things out there without faces were just symptoms of the problem, not the actual problem. Since they were exposed, they could never leave now. They would end up just like them. A sorry way to go, unable to speak, see, hear, or experience the world at all. A diabolical disease indeed. "Professor, we have contained them. What's our next move?" The question came from a subordinate of mine. I thought about it for a while. Perhaps we could study them a bit. We hadn't collected specimens before they reached critical containment stage in which we could no longer keep them within the facility. "Keep them under strict observation and don't tell them anything. I want to run some tests. I have no idea how they stumbled into this forest. It's highly secure from the rest of the population. This particular area of the forest is, in fact, a pocket dimension, as you know, so it is highly unlikely that they could have stumbled across it by chance. But yet here they are. This is an anomaly for certain. There must be something unique about them, and we'll figure it out." I shut off the monitors. These 3 boys would be here for an indefinite period of time. I couldn't risk them infecting anyone else. It's sad their lives had to turn out this way, but hopefully it wouldn't be all for waste. Maybe they were the key to solving all of this. So quoth this raven. Thank you so kindly for stopping by my chateau, my darlings. It does mean so much to me. Please, if you have not subscribed, as many of you have not, please do so. Give me a like so I know what you would like to hear. And comment. I always love to read your comments. And special thanks to my Patreon and membership supporters. Ciao, darlings.